Hey everybody, welcome back to JC Unplugged. We're on episode 5, and not to waste any time, let's get right into it. Carlos, you ready?
Yes.
All right. Question number 1. If an individual lacks stability to stand on one leg, would you still have them attempt a single leg anterior reach?
No. No. You have to balance the 7 frame. You got to do that before you have motion. So once you can balance the 7 frame, then you can start doing anything. The way I would start it is, let's say that the person is doing rehab or with a very, very, very deconditioned person. The first thing that happens is you're here. Boom. And then the trainer can come around and make sure that the hip is not collapsed. You see that from the back. So right here. Once that happens, this is what I do. Once the hip is stabilized parallel to the ground, I just pump. Pump and make sure that when you pump, the hip doesn't tilt. It doesn't collapse. After that, after you can pump like 20 times nice and short, then you can attempt this. Once this happens, then you can start. So that's it. Stability, okay, so you're balanced. Little pumps, go to about 20. After that, start reaching to the knee and then down.
So as a segue into that, what would be a more advanced exercise of someone doing a single leg reach? Once they master the single leg anterior reach,
the run,
some good progression.
like for example, the runner. So you get into a running position and then you're up tall. Boom, up tall. But when you go up tall, you have to go to the ball of your foot, full extension of the hip, so the hip flexor really lengthens, and that is probably your most advanced, non-loaded single leg exercise. Of course, to load a single leg exercise, you load it down in here, and even light pressure here for stability, and then you can do a compound row or a staggered stance RDL with a cable. That will rock your glutes without loading the spine, actually with traction on the spine in the flex position, so that's a monster there.
Okay, on a single arm bent over row, do you want to keep the shoulder compact and still, or do you want a little bit of movement involved?
For the most part, the bent over single leg or staggered stance row is really a hip exercise.
No, single arm, one arm row.
Oh, not on a single leg?
No.
Got it. So that would be, what we're talking about is, some kind of foot position, stabilized on a bench, and then you're rocking it.
Well, I think that's the difference. Are you stabilizing the opposite arm in rowing, or are you just hinging at the hip and just doing a one arm bent over row?
If I want hypertrophy and strength at the lat, I stabilize it. I would go 3-point stand right here, parallel, bench, and then rock and roll. If I just want lat, I'm gonna pack the shoulder blades back and just move the shoulders. If for whatever reason, I want more movement, more rotation, I'll let the shoulder dip. But you have to give me the reason why you're letting it dip and why not. I've just stated it. If I want more movement, say for a wrestler that is going to have a lot of thoracic mobility and scapular mobility, I'll let them move the scapula. But before they move the scapula, they got to be able to go in here and do it without moving the scapula. I want them to move the scapula because they want to, not because the scapula is moving on its own.
I think on the bent over row, one thing we need to point out too is there's a lot of one arm rows with a lot of kyphotic backs.
Right.
So we got to make sure that they can even hip hinge to keep the back flat.
If that's what you want, I will let a slight kyphosis with wrestlers and people who need kyphosis. So all depends on what you're doing. If you want the bent over row for hip, then don't stabilize it with your hand. Just hold it with your hip. And so that's a double whammy. Probably the hip will be the limiting factor if you're not supported. So that's not a back exercise, it's really a hip exercise. I can attest for this. You can get strong enough where with a single leg, you can do bent over rows with 110 for 5 6s I've done. But it takes time. But by that time, your hip is strong as heck, when your hip is no longer the limiting factor in a bent over row.
Okay, where are we at? I think question 4 here. What's your 2 favorite drills for improving footwork for boxers and some of our MMA fighters?
I like the lateral rotation. So you have a ladder, and let's put left foot is inside the box, and then the left foot leads, the right foot follows. So you're in here, and then you go to the next spot. Boom, boom. That is my favorite for combat because it's great for judo players, and it's great for changing from orthodox to southpaw in boxing and just doing angles. The other one is a split second. Really, it's in, out, in, out. So those two are probably the most fundamental foot moves that I see in sports, and it involves the ladder.
All right, one last question here. What are some good exercises to open up the hip flexors with clients who have low back pain?
With low back pain, give me one of those boxes, please. One of those blue boxes. This is the easiest one for anybody, okay? The posterior reach was a progression that I learned from Gary Gray. And it went like this, all right? Short lever arm, boom, boom, boom. You can go parallel, staggered, and single leg. But it went like this, and then you would increase the lever arm. That obviously opens up here. But most people would get that from the stomach, so their backs were on fire. We went to this, right here. When you bring this leg up, the pelvis automatically tilts forward. That gives you a little bit more extension of this hip flexion. And then we just move here. Boom. This is it. Just move the whole body. Keep the foot flat, move the whole body. This is it. And so you're driving it from the bottom down instead of from the top down, and it doesn't involve the lower back. So we went to the step up. It's almost like an anterior hip shift right in here. I suppose you could do it, okay, in here. Just that, right there. You squeeze this, both feet forward, flat foot, and just squeeze here. And then from in here, okay, you can do rows and you can do presses. And just learn that, and that's awesome, easy stuff.
All right, that's it. That's it for episode 5. We'll be back in a couple of weeks for episode 6. In the meantime, if you guys have any questions you'd like for me to ask JC, email me at adam@ihpfit.com. See you in a couple of weeks.